On the morning of October 18th, 31 AD, Lucius Aelius Sejanus took his seat inside the Roman Senate. He arrived expecting to receive formal tribunician powers, the final legal step required to secure his position as the successor to the imperial throne. A messenger arrived bearing a sealed scroll from Emperor Tiberius on Capri. The chamber fell silent as the consul broke the seal and began reading the emperor's words to the assembled senators. How did a bodyguard dismantle the Roman government from the inside, and what did it take for the emperor to execute this final ambush? Sejanus began as the prefect of the Praetorian Guard, a role defined by its physical proximity to the emperor. While other officials managed distant provinces, Sejanus managed the ruler's personal safety, standing just steps from the throne. In 23 AD, Sejanus convinced Tiberius to unify the scattered guard barracks into a single fortress, the Castra Praetoria. This gave Sejanus command of the only concentrated military force in Italy, holding a monopoly on organized violence within the capital. To secure the succession, Sejanus next had to remove Tiberius's biological son and heir, Drusus. Sejanus, seducing Drusus's wife, Livilla, gained an accomplice inside the heir's private household. Together, they poisoned Drusus slowly over several months. By the time he died in September of 23 AD, the symptoms appeared consistent with a natural, lingering illness, leaving Sejanus's involvement undetected. The death of the only legitimate heir created a vacuum at the center of the Julian line. Sejanus was now the emperor's most vital advisor, standing at the threshold of the imperial family. Sejanus's most effective maneuver was weaponizing Tiberius's distrust of the Senate. He spent years convincing the aging emperor that Rome was a hive of conspirators, making the capital feel like a prison. In 26 AD, Tiberius finally withdrew to the island of Capri. He would never return to Rome, governing instead from a villa perched on a cliff 150 miles away from the Senate House. This geographic gap turned Sejanus into the sole link between the ruler and the state. Every petition from a provincial governor and every report from the Senate was filtered through the prefect's office before it ever reached Capri. With the emperor isolated, Sejanus used the treason laws, the lex maiestatis, to purge his enemies. He paid networks of informers to bring charges against any senator who threatened his influence, transforming the Senate into a terrified court that blindly rubber-stamped his endless stream of executions without asking a single question. He targeted the family of the popular general Germanicus next, arresting his widow Agrippina and her eldest sons. Isolated from the emperor's protection, the boys were locked in dungeons and starved to death. Sejanus now dictated the grain distribution, managed the city's security, and controlled the Senate's legislative agenda. He had removed every viable rival and assumed the daily functions of the Roman state, while the man who held the title of emperor lived in total seclusion. Sejanus eventually overreached when he asked for permission to marry Livilla. For Tiberius, this request confirmed that the prefect was no longer just a protector, he was a competitor trying to enter the imperial bloodline. This move alerted Antonia Minor, Tiberius's sister-in-law. She managed to smuggle a secret dossier to Capri detailing Sejanus's crimes, including the murder of Drusus and his plans to seize total power. Tiberius responded with a campaign of confusion. He sent a series of contradictory letters to Rome, one day hinting at his own death, the next day announcing he was on his way to the capital, keeping Sejanus from launching a coup while his followers began to slip away. While Sejanus was distracted by these shifting signals, the emperor secretly appointed Macro to replace him. Macro spent the night before the Senate meeting coordinating with the city's police force to ensure Sejanus would be defenseless. The very isolation Sejanus had created for the emperor became his own undoing. Tiberius used that distance to mask the movements of his agents, striking down the prefect with a single letter. On the evening of October 18th, Sejanus was taken to the Mamertine prison and strangled. His body was then cast onto the Gemonian stairs to be desecrated by the public. As the news spread, Roman mobs hunted down anyone who had courted Sejanus's favor. They tore down his statues and smashed his images in a frenzy of violence that lasted for days. The emperor's revenge extended to the prefect's children. Because Roman law forbade the execution of a virgin, the guards were ordered to rape Sejanus's young daughter before strangling her. The Senate finalized his fall with a decree of damnatio memoriae. His name was chiseled out of every public record and monument, and his face was struck from every coin in an attempt to scrub his 5-year reign from history. But the purge had left the empire's future in ruins. By murdering every stable heir to the throne, Sejanus had narrowed the succession down to the only person he had failed to kill. That survivor was a traumatized young man who had watched his family perish from his hiding place on Capri. His name was Caligula, and he was the legacy Sejanus left for Rome.